Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 138 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin on Twitter, joined by my co-host, Erik Robinson, at _Erik_Robinson. Erik, how are you doing this evening?
Doing pretty good, man. Doing pretty good.
Yes, and obviously been a busy couple weeks. We were off last week with myself on vacation. I think some other folks are on vacation this week, but we couldn't possibly go 2 weeks without a show, especially when we've got a lot of free agents to break down, including a signing today. We've got a trade to talk about. We've got at 9 o'clock, we're going to be having Nathan Cooper from Sports Info Solutions on to talk about his observations and the upcoming draft class, including the Falcons and who they may be interested in. So it's going to be a full show for you guys. We might get, I guess, Adnan when he gets off of his class as well. But it's going to be, a little more intimate discussion tonight with just Erik and I, so you guys get us all to yourself. But obviously, well, I guess we haven't talked about any of the free agent additions, so there's a lot to get to. But I guess
we didn't have any activity in the last
no,
year.
right. So let's just start at the top with the most recent signing, which would be cornerback Fabien Moreau, most recently of the Washington football team. I don't believe any of the details of the contract have been announced yet, but what are your instant thoughts? Because we haven't. I mean, I think we just put the article out on the site. It was so recent. So, what are your immediate takeaways from that signing?
I like the signing, actually. He was a former third-round pick out of UCLA for Washington back in 2017, and he led the team in interceptions in 2019. He played in 60 games over the course of 4 seasons, kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit there in Washington. So one thing that stood out about him, especially in the pre-draft process, tested very well.
Yeah.
Even though he got hurt at his pro day, I think he tore his pec at his pro day, but tested very, very well. Ran a 4.35 in the 40. He had a very excellent broad jump. I think a vert of 38 and a half. So he's a really good all-around athlete. A little bit over probably around 6 feet, shade over 200 pounds. Can play both left and right corner. Is solid in press man, off man zone. The one red flags that I see with him, he's a big corner, in terms of NFL size, but he doesn't play as if he's a big corner. He's somewhat of I don't want to say finesse big corner, but he's not as physical as you would want him to be. He's not as aggressive as you would want him to be. He can play press man, but he's not going to be that type of corner that's really going to get in your grill and going to irritate you all game. So that's one thing that stood out to me. The instincts are not necessarily great. They're decent at times. If you go back and look at some of his film, route anticipation was something that he needed to work on as well. But outside of that, I think it's a good signing. I think it's a solid signing. I think this is a guy that can actually come in and he can push Oliver and Sheffield right now. He can, if a game was to go on tomorrow, Moro can probably start, if not start, see some considerable minutes opposite AJ Terrell. Like he's a corner. He's still young. Kid is only 20.
Yeah, still young for sure.
Yeah. So he still got some refinement to do. So it's not like they're signing an old vet that's just close to the end of the line. Like no, he's coming off his first contract with Washington, so he's still fresh.
Right. Yeah.
So I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I assume it's probably pretty cheap. Also, speaking of Evan, here he is. By the way, what's up, Evan? How are you doing tonight, man? Can you hear us, buddy?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. I got you. Okay, I figured you might have been on the phone, with Ian Rappaport getting the latest scoop for us. So yeah.
No. Ian is on the phone with him. That's what it is.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Ian's calling him for the tip. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I gotta try and find somebody for the next week. So.
Yeah. We're still working on it. Yeah, we're getting that going. But we're having a little Fabien Moreau discussion. So I mean, I guess My takeaway on that is I like it. Like I think Erik is possibly right that right now Moreau is maybe the cornerback too, just kind of by default. I mean, maybe you could consider Isaiah Oliver like the second best corner. I don't know, but I mean, Oliver's probably staying in the slot.
I think Moro can push him just
I
based on
mean, probably.
athletic profile.
Yeah. They certainly don't have a lot, right, at corner. So
Yeah.
Moreau kind of steps in as a starter by default because the only other three guys are, well, the other guys would be like Sheffield, who was bad last year, and a couple of UDFA types. That's basically it. Yeah.
In terms of the draft, how this will reflect in the draft, I feel comfortable by saying that they're probably not going to take a corner early.
Yeah, I mean,
They very well may still take a corner just for depth purposes. I think this is something. This may indicate to me that they may not be leaning towards bringing back Bleedy Ray Wilson, maybe Denard as well.
right.
Because now, technically, if you were to bring those guys back, you'll have what, 6 corners on the roster.
I think they already have 6. Yeah. So
So we already have 6. So I think this may be a sign that those 2 guys may be out the door. And the reason why I wouldn't say early, you wouldn't take a corner early, because some of the early corners in the draft, the Surtains, the JC Horns, those guys would be your de facto starter opposite AJ Terrell, which means you would have to kick either Moreau on the inside, which is not a strong suit, and we should never see Fabien Moreau play slot corner. If he does, we're in some trouble.
right.
It's going to look ugly. But I think that it's more of a sign that they're probably just going to wait to probably day 3 to take a corner to fill the back end of the depth on that. I mean, it's interesting to see them take this signing over a guy like Malcolm Butler, who a lot of people assumed was going to be a Falcon at some point. I'm still kind of a little upset, even though I know financially it wasn't going to work out. I'm still a little upset that they, didn't go after Dory Jackson, who I
Right.
thought.
That ended up being a huge deal. That's way more than I thought.
Yeah, I didn't think he was going to get that type of money. But Jesus, I take it. Hey, New York offers it, take it. I see it. But I thought he would have been a hell of a signing, and I thought that would have been a great pairing at corner going forward. But, again, Fabien Moreau, they could have done a lot worse. Trust me.
Yeah.
A lot worse. This guy he fits the athletic profile of today's game. His issues were, his development was a little slower than expected for a third round corner that, is 200 plus pounds, ran a 4.3. He didn't develop as quick as Washington wanted him to, and he ended up getting lost in the shuffle because over the years they ended up signing Josh Norman.
Right.
Remember last year they brought in Quentin Dunbar, and it just created a logjam for him. So like I said, if a game was tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised if Moreau was the starter opposite AJ.
Right, because right now it's like AJ on one side, Moreau on the other, and Oliver in the slot. That's probably your 3 corners. So yeah.
So
it's wild.
So like I said, I think if they're going to go a corner, it's probably going to be day 3 now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know that it really moves the needle that much. I mean, it probably depends more on like who's available. But I think with all these signings, and we're going to obviously get to all of them, and I think the theme that I'm getting is like these are all signings designed to make it so like they don't have to draft X position in X round, or they're just going to like fall apart. Like with this signing, that kind of means like, okay, we could get by with this corner group and like a day 3 addition, with the 2 outside linebacker edge guys, like now we could get through with like a day 2 pick there. It doesn't have to be the first round pick, know.
Yeah. I will want them to take an edge on day 2 at some point.
Oh, they definitely need to still take an edge on day 2. But, the Erik Harris signing means you only need to fill 1 safety spot, through like a higher draft pick, someone who needs to be an instant starter, and so on and so forth. Lee Smith means you don't have to draft a blocking tight end or add another blocking tight end. Mike Davis means that you don't have to take Najee Harris. I'm sorry for all of you that want Najee Harris. Like, you don't have to get this top tier running back prospect. You can get a more developmental guy if you need to. So
Gono crosses out a swing tackle possibility.
Yeah,
you got your swing tackle in place there with him. So
Yep, yep. Yeah, I think it's funny actually Gono being brought back because we didn't get to discuss that either. His second round tender. I think his second round tender is actually the biggest cap hit in terms of what they've signed this offseason. Yes. His like $3.4 million second round tender is actually the most money they've paid out in a single contract in free agency so far.
We're going now?
Yeah, because I think Mike Davis is only a 2 million cap hit this year.
Yeah.
If I did my math right.
It's a
So
very underrated sign.
yes, of course. But it's just funny that Gono's like tender is going to be like quote unquote the biggest signing so far.
The guy
But
who never got playing time in 3 years.
exactly. But yeah, I mean, I do like Moreau. He's definitely a better player outside. I have some friends that are Washington fans, and they've been very clear that he was kind of a disaster as a slot corner. But on the outside, he was fine. He's not a finished product still, but the athletic profile is awesome. I mean, this is a guy that has a lot of upside because of that. And like Eric mentioned, it's very young still. Moreau is so. Lots of opportunity there for development.
I didn't see one Washington writer that was, and I know several, but I didn't see one Washington writer that was, good riddance or glad he's gone. Right. It was more like, okay, he's a solid kid. A lot of writers thought that Washington was going to bring him back, but he didn't. So it's been nothing negative that I've seen from Moro right now so far.
Right.
His development is probably a little slower than expected.
Yeah. So, that happens sometimes.
It does.
I mean, players don't always go as great.
It may be a scheme thing, and I guarantee you that the switch because he did go, because of course he played boundary at UCLA. He was for a couple of years. He was the top corner on their roster at UCLA for a while, and I guess. Often the whole switching from an outside corner to slot, it may sound simple. Mm-hmm. Man, for some players, it takes a while to get used to those type of duties. And I think that was his case, to where he was probably developing, decently on the outside. And they were like, hey, we need you to get some slot duty. And it slowed down.
Yeah.
Because now
it's very different. Yeah. A lot of people just assume that it's similar, but the footwork is different. Especially in Atlanta's cover 3, like those outside corners are basically playing like bail coverage. Like they have to take the vertical routes, and they have to turn and run and do all this stuff. And that slot corner has to basically play like a kind of zone. Like he has to stare at the quarterback. He's got to watch the routes in the middle. It's a very different role, and it is in a lot of different coverage schemes, not just cover 3. But
it's a lot of more, characteristics is asked for a slot corner. I mean, you're going to have for when it comes to being a slot corner. Think about it. In today's game, is no longer are you covering the Julian Edelmans of the Danny Amendolas of the slot. Now you're getting Julio Jones in the slot. Now you're getting DeAndre Hopkins in the slot. Now you're getting Chris Godwin's in the slot. So it's different now. So now you have to prepare for the small receivers, but you also have to, prepare for the 6'3", 225-pound guy. So your footwork has to be different. Your instincts have to be on point, because at times as a slot corner, you're running through traffic. You're running through a lot more traffic than you are as a boundary corner. Like you said, he's been playing bail responsibilities. All he has to do is drift back 10 yards and just play what's underneath them, compared to a slot corner where you got to anticipate a route. You may have to run. You definitely have to pick up a lot more on pick routes as a slot corner. So it changes a lot. The responsibilities are a lot different for a guy in the slot. And I think that's probably what hurt him when it came to him finding some refinement.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to running back Mike Davis. That was the other recent big signing, maybe the most meaningful in terms of who's going to actually end up playing like the most snaps. Like Mike Davis there could easily be a scenario where Mike Davis is the nominal starter going into week 1 at running back. Davis had his best chance, I would say, as a starter last year with Carolina after Christian McCaffrey got hurt. Wasn't like a tremendous player in terms of like yards per carry or anything like that, but did produce just fine behind what was a fairly shaky Carolina offensive line. He's not necessarily going to have a much better offensive line situation in Atlanta. We'll see what happens, but big time, one of the biggest signings, 2-year deal for Davis. Surprisingly low number of career carries. So this is not a guy who's been like ground down by other teams, and the Falcons are kind of getting nothing that's left, aka Todd Gurley. But yeah, I had to throw that one in there. But what are your guys' thoughts? Evan, did you have any thoughts on that Mike Davis signing? How does that one feel for you? Evan, my brother. No, he said he was trying to fix his mic. I might have called him out too soon. All right, we'll let Erik get the first crack at this one. So what's your thoughts on Mike Davis there?
I'm good with it, man. I really do. And I know a lot of fans were zeroed in on Najee or Travis Etienne early on in the draft. It doesn't change the fact that they're still going to take a running back. They're still going to take one, probably round 2 at the earliest, round 4 at the latest.
Yeah.
Maybe 5, depending on how the draft shakes out. But I think it's a very underrated signing.
Yeah.
They signed him for 2 years. And of course, that 2-year deal helps them cap-wise this year, of course, because they don't have to shovel out, a ton of money for him up front.
Right.
You basically just spread it out over 2 years. But, he had over 1,000 scrimmage yards last year, had almost 5 yards a touch last year, had 52 catches, which is for a backup running back. That's damn good, man. 8 total touchdowns last year, and like you mentioned, he's been in the league for about 5 or 6 years, but the guy has a career total of 412 carries, which means he's still fresh. He has plenty of tread. He just turned 28 about a month ago. So the guy, he still has, some miles on him. And again, I like the signing. You go back to both games against the Panthers last year, Mike Davis was able to make a few plays here and there. Mike Davis is tough to tackle, first and foremost. I know he's short. I know he's stocky, but you don't want to tackle him, especially especially in the fourth quarter when you're tired, which is the first game against Carolina at home. That's when you saw Mike Davis truly eat up that defense in the fourth quarter when that defense was gassed, and he was just pounding the rock for 6-7 yards per carry. I think I can't remember who tossed out the stat in our group chat, but they mentioned that he was 14th in the league in yards after contact.
Yeah.
Across the entire NFL, which is really good, again, for a backup running back. But I like the signing. And I think this is it's cheap.
It's like $2 million cap hit this year, I think. So
right. And like you said, let's be honest, man, he's better than Todd Gurley right now.
What did I think Todd Gurley averaged 3.7 yards per carry last year. So
he's better than Gurley right now. Mike Davis is probably the best running back on the roster right now.
Probably. You would hope so based on what they paid him. I mean, which still wasn't a ton.
I think they're going to go with a 1A, 1B type tandem with whoever they get in the draft. I would think guys like Etienne, Kenneth Gainwell, Michael Carter, those guys complement him very well. And those are the type of guys that I would keep an eye on in the draft. Kylan Hill out of Mississippi State is another one that comes to mind. So it doesn't. They're still going to take it back. Don't think this guy is the starter, the clear starter. He's the leader. No, they're still going to take somebody. It's just probably not going to be Najee Harris now.
Right. Yeah. Evan, I saw that you reconnected. Are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can. Yes. We can now.
Okay.
Yes. Perfect.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I thought I was muted, and then I'm like, oh, my earbuds are dead. So that helps.
My God. Yeah. Well, that would be a problem.
I mean, when he's on the phone constantly.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, those earbuds just go out. But did you have a take on that Mike Davis signing?
I really liked it. If you've been watching the show a while, you've probably heard me and Erik have talked about him before, talking about free agents, upcoming free agency and stuff. And he was always someone I was mentioning just because I thought the fit worked well, to where he's not a guy who would be super expensive. And obviously that showed in the contract. I think you read the contract details. I think it's 2 years for $5 million, which to me is a pretty damn good deal. And he's not like old and has a ton of, tread on the tires still. I really like the move, and he's a guy where you can still, as Erik said, draft a running back, but if you don't and you kind of punt it to next year, like he's a guy who can still, like, you're still going to probably sign somebody if you don't draft anyone late, but he can be a guy who can start for the next year or two, in the offense that, Arthur Smith's going to bring here, and you'll be okay. He's not a long-term fit. I don't think anybody should, think he's going to come in and be, the second coming of Michael Turner, like a bruising back who's just, one of the best in franchise history. But I really like the move. It's going to be much, I'll put it this way, it's going to be a much better signing, I think, than what we got from Todd Gurley last year, where it was more about the name value and what he did in the past, where Mike Davis, he's been on other teams. He's played kind of the backup role where he would come in on, like, in Seattle and San Francisco if their starter was down, that kind of thing. Now he's getting a chance to shine, and he's from Atlanta, so I'm sure that kind of played into the deal a little bit, where he probably wanted to be with us. So I'm excited. That's so far my favorite signing.
Yeah, I agree. It is. I think it's one of the more exciting ones, and I think it's one that makes a ton of sense. And for the reasons you mentioned as well, like, I don't think it takes running back off the board. Yeah, George Costanza knows I read his donation. Yeah, I definitely did read it, George. We're gonna get to it, but yeah, yeah. I mean, I like the signing a lot, and again, like we said with the Moreau signing, I think this gives them more flexibility to be like, we don't have to come away from day two with a running back, because we have, Mike Davis and Ito Smith, not a backfield that's necessarily like terrifying teams, but it's a functional one. This is a guy that averaged 4.6 yards per carry in Seattle in his best season. He's capable of that. I think in a better scheme with hopefully a better offensive line in Atlanta this year, he could be a perfectly serviceable starting running back. I think it would be best to add another player, and we're going to talk about that later in the show. And we've got our draft guy coming on. We'll talk about some of those options. We know that the Falcons, for instance, were very interested in Kenneth Gainwell. They've spoken with him. I think that would be a perfect pairing. Gainwell's a guy you can get in the third round, and that would be, I think, an excellent pairing there. So very excited about that signing. I think it gives them a lot of flexibility, which is good when you have a bunch of needs, because you never know who's going to be there at your pick, and you want to be able to take the highest player on your board remaining and not be forced into one maneuver or another. All right, speaking of George, we got a $3 donation from George. Thank you, brother, for your support. He says, "You know why I'm here. It's because Kyle Pitts is always going to be the pick." He says, though, he wouldn't hate Surtain. His father was a great corner. Pedigree means a lot in the NFL. I think Pitts would help us in the red zone, where we completely sucked. Weren't we like 27th in the NFL in red zone percentage or something? Yeah, I think they were exactly 27th. Maybe 28th. It was bad. But yeah, we're definitely going to talk about Pitts later in the show. That potential selection for Atlanta has picked up a lot of steam recently. So, George, we will be definitely talking about Pitts and the draft portion of the show. All right, next couple signings. Let's talk about the edge guys they added, Brandon Copeland and Barkevious Mingo. To me, these guys, neither one huge additions. Both are quality players. Both can be spot starters, but they're not really moving the needle for you. I mean, to me, these are kind of like the Steven Means, Charles Harris replacements. They're just better for like a 3-4. Like they're the 3-4 version of those players, basically.
That's a perfect. Yep. That's a perfect summation.
Yeah. Yep. And like, they're both solid guys. Like, they're going to be able to, be your third and fourth edge rushers. They're going to be able to rotate. Mingo's had kind of a career resurgence as like a special teamer. He's super athletic, so he's played well there. Neither one's going to be like a 5 to 10 sack player, but 2 to 4 each, not out of the realm of possibility. And, the Falcons have coaching staff connections to these players. So yeah, I mean, what do you guys think about those two additions?
You gotta one thing that I saw, man. The fans gotta understand. Just because a player is signed at a certain time in free agency doesn't necessarily mean he's a starter.
Right.
He's going to get considerable playing time, or that he's the answer at edge or whatever. Like, that doesn't you got to look at the whole body of work for these guys and what they're being brought in on as far as financial terms. Like I immediately, once Copeland was signed and Mingo was signed, those are depth signings. Those are guys that are bottom, bottom of the group when it comes to edge, probably more special teams contributors than anything else. So I don't know. I saw people panic once Mingo was signed and saying, "Oh, he's the starter opposite." He's not going to start. As you mentioned,
I mean, at this point he might be, but it's probably Jacob Twatty Mariner as the other starter at this point. But
he is, to me, is going to be neither one of those guys are guaranteed to make the roster. That's the thing.
I mean, they're not guaranteed. No, I mean it's
no. Like, and again, I guess some fans felt that they were, they're going to be in the rotation. Like these guys may get cut in training camp, man. Let's just be honest with you. I mean,
but they desperately needed people. Like they needed guys. They had nothing. Yeah.
Like you said, these were the Stephen Means and Charles Harris replacements. Yes, they're both are just smaller and a little bit more athletic than the two of those to play edge. It doesn't change anything. They're probably will have a new edge starter by the end of round 3 in the draft.
Yeah, I would think so. There's so many good edge players in that round 2, round 3. Like there's no way they don't get one in that range.
Yeah, you're not going to sit here and tell me they're going to sign Mingo and pass on the top half of the edge class. This edge class, at the top half at least, is deep. Okay, yeah. I will say that. Yeah. It is really deep. I think you can find a considerable rotational player in the 6th round. But at the top half of it, man, you can get some good juice there, man.
Yeah, so, I think so.
They're not going to pass that up for Kiki Mingo. This is
yeah. No, and I think both. Like I think look, Brandon Copeland, solid player. I mean, I think his best season he did have 6 sacks or 7 sacks.
5 sacks.
Yeah. I mean, so he's someone who can rotate. He's a solid run defender. Mingo always has had the potential to be great. He just never has. So neither one's gonna be more than the edge rusher 3, more than likely. But I think the most likely starter opposite Fowler is probably Jacob Twatty Mariner, and then a draft pick. That's probably your top 3 edge rushers. We'll see. Maybe it's Hamilcar Rashed, maybe it's Carlos Basham. I mean, who knows? But
I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, just based on the signings that we've seen on defense. They have 9 picks, and there's a decent chance that they're probably going to walk away with a dozen players at the trades in the draft.
Maybe
I wouldn't be surprised if they take 2 edge rushers in the draft.
I mean, we've mocked it before. I think,
yeah, just based on the signings that we've seen so far. These signings are depth signings that how I'm looking at it, and I don't. It leaves plenty of room for them to draft the starters before these depth guys, before these veterans. They haven't, to me. Erik Harris was a decent signing, but I don't even think Erik Harris is a starter right now. And a lot of people already claim that he's the starter.
Well, he's the default starter right now, but that doesn't mean he's the final starter. But.
Right. But I guarantee you they're probably going to draft a free safety and let the 2 of them battle out in training camp, and whoever wins. But
yeah.
Just based on the signings that we've seen so far, they're filling in the back part of the depth chart with these signings, which tells me they're probably going to draft starters at those positions.
Yeah.
So
I think so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, speaking of Erik Harris, that's the other big one. I mean, right now I don't know. I mean, he's probably slated in as the strong safety starter at this point, but he's going to compete with Jalen Hawkins there. But at free safety, they have to add someone in the draft. They just don't really have anyone. So
they don't have anybody.
So Richie Grant, Trayvon Moreau, I mean, Javon Holland. I mean, there's so many day 2 safeties and they're going to get one. So.
And Harris has played free safety. He played free safety for the Raiders last year. I can tell you right now, that's not his best position.
Yeah, he's a better strong. He's 225 pounds. He's the same size as Dion.
He's better closer to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
But again, some people were upset about the signing, and I'm saying, well, at the time that the signing was made, they literally had no
It was Jalen Hawkins. Yeah.
One safety on the roster.
Yeah.
They had one safety. And I'm like, guys, like seriously, they're not going to draft 5 safeties. They're going to have to sign some vets just to fill out the depth portion of it.
Yeah.
They had nobody. So we'll see going forward. The thing is, when it comes to this safety class, it is a much better free safety class than a strong safety class.
Right.
If you're going to target a strong safety, you better do it early because there's not much depth behind that. There's one guy that come to mind, Hamza Nasruddin out of Florida State.
Yeah.
6'4", 225, a real versatile chess piece when it comes to being a defender. And I wouldn't mind him being the week 1 starter at strong safety, to be honest with you. But
yeah,
they need to get their single high safety early.
Yeah, I agree. Man, Metamorpho, new donator with the $35, brother. I think that's a new record. Thank
George.
you so much, man. He says,
George.
Well, George has donated far more over time. You know, George likes to get the takes out, and I respect that. But yes, Metamorpho says, NorCal Falcon diehard. Meta, thank you so much for your support. Welcome to the show. Thank you again for that, brother. Yeah, thanks a lot, man. We really appreciate that. Yeah, Evan, did you have a take on the Erik Harris signing, anything like that?
No, I mean, there's not much more to add that Erik kind of touched on. I think overall, most of these signings, as Erik said, they're just guys that are filling out depth, and they don't prevent you from drafting at any of those positions, even at running back. I think that's still not going to prevent them from doing it. It was such a cheap deal. So yeah, I mean, necessary moves overall.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see. What was another? I think we've covered everyone except maybe the Lee.
Did you talk
Smith
about
trade.
The trade?
Yeah, we haven't talked about the Lee Smith trade. And I know a lot of people. Lee Smith did a video today, an interview where he was talking about coming to the Falcons. So let's talk about the Lee Smith trade. That one was very interesting because Lee Smith, not exactly a household name at tight end, but if you dig a little deeper, he's been one of the most consistent, respected blocking tight ends in the league. We know how much Arthur Smith values tight ends, particularly as blockers, not just as receivers. So, with the knowledge, Lee Smith said he was going to retire if he didn't get traded to someplace that he really wanted. Apparently, Atlanta was on his short list of teams that he wanted to go to because of Arthur Smith and Arthur Blank. So yeah, what do you guys think about that Lee Smith edition? Better than Luke Stalker, I'll say. Yeah, by default. Yeah.
And it cost them a 7th round pick in 2022, which none of us are going to care about.
It's actually better. It helps we don't have to waste our time mocking it. So
let's not pretend like, oh my God, they traded away. No, none of us care about the 7th round pick.
And he's as Kevin said, he's a really good blocking tight end. He's going to be in, I imagine, on, field goals and stuff like that. It's a necessary piece, Yeah.
And I mean, he's been a reliable receiver, if not one who's caught a lot of passes. I think he's caught 90% of his targets or something like that. He had 2 touchdowns last year. He's like a reliable outlet. He's not someone who's going to be a volume receiver, certainly, but he's someone that can catch a pass if needed.
Let's be honest. That was a completely boring move. And
what?
It's not exciting to talk about.
No respect for
Lee Smith. No disrespect to Lee Smith. My favorite part about that is it's going to shave about 20 minutes off of our mock drafts next year.
Exactly.
When we don't have to argue over who we're going to take in the 7th round.
Yes. Which obscure punter/kicker will be the selection? Tune in next year to find out, folks.
Yeah, man. That was weird. People complain about using draft capital. It's a 7th round pick, man. Can anyone name
a proven veteran? Yeah.
Can anyone name a 7th round pick that's actually made the roster for the Falcons in the last?
Kamal Ishmael.
Yeah, Kamal Ishmael's the one. What, Zeke Mata, right? Zeke Mata made it for a year.
Over the last 10 or 15 years, it's 1 or 2 guys. Come on, man. We don't care about that.
Yeah, don't disrespect the UCF legend.
Yes,
UCF. Yeah, that one pick against the Bucks on Thursday night. I think in 2014 when we beat them 58 to -1 million.
Oh yeah, That was a great game. But yeah, as you have joined us now, Adnan, he is at Say Which Way on Twitter, by the way, folks.
I just pop in and out, guys.
Yeah. Anything that you wanted to add about? We've talked about all the free agents at this point before you got here, but did you want to add anything about any of the ones that stood out to you?
I like the Fabien Moreau one because I think we got him. I think he's for the minimum, and his coverage grade last year, according to PFF, was bigger than any of our DBs. So
yeah, they disrespected AJ Terrell a lot towards the end of the season.
Other than Keanu Neal, who's no longer on the roster, was the only defensive back with a higher coverage grade than Fabien Moreau in 2020, according to PFF. So it's a nice, cheap signing who I think will probably start unless we get a cornerback on one of the first 2 days of the draft, which I don't think we'll do.
Yeah, it's seeming less likely there just because of on like the spectrum of needs. Cornerback is lower because they do have AJ Terrell, and like at free safety they have nothing. So like if they don't trade down, they're gonna have a hard time taking a cornerback before day 3. Now they could trade down, and we'll be talking about that obviously throughout the remainder of the offseason. But I just think that I like the Moreau signing. I like his fit on the outside next to AJ Terrell, and I like Isaiah Oliver a lot better as a slot corner. So I think that really, makes it work on a lot of fronts, and then maybe we can, add a quality depth piece on day 3. I mean, my knowledge of day 3 corners is pretty limited at this point, but that's why we're having a draft guy come on soon. So.
But there's some guys on day 3 that they can go after that I think would be pretty good selectees. So like Adnan pointed out, it's a good signing because it gives the team a possible starter for a very cheap price tag and
less than $1 million.
Yeah. Was it so the terms were released? I didn't see them.
I thought I saw something about it being a minimum, but I could be completely wrong. But if it's
that would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, if it's not minimum, it's probably damn near close, if we're being honest.
I mean, they couldn't afford much more than that. So
my apologies if it's like 400 or 500K more. You guys can bring forth your complaints to at the Falcoholic.
Yes, at the Falcoholic. Yeah, and George with the $1 wants to know what you're drinking tonight, Adnan.
Ginger ale.
Oh, hey, nice, very nice. Yeah, I do see your other donation, George, too. We'll get to that in just a second. But yeah, I mean, speaking of with that Fabien Moreau signing, the Falcons are officially at 51 players, and you guys know what that means. It's top 51 rule time, which means any future signings are reduced essentially by $660K. Because when the top 51 rule is in effect, any contracts that are lower than the 51st contract in terms of cost do not count against the salary cap at all. So that is a good thing for a team that's as cash strapped as the Falcons, because my estimate was the Falcons probably had about $1.5 million, give or take a couple $100,000 after the Mike Davis signing. So with this Moreau signing, if it is like the $660K number that Adnan mentioned, they're probably at around $800,000. But because of the top 51 rule, if they sign true vet minimum players that are less than $660,000 or equivalent to that, they don't count against the cap at all. So they could start loading up on guys that are, essentially these very cheap contracts without having to shell out any money according to the salary cap. Now they're going to have to clear more space for the draft class, probably $7 million, give or take. But they can now sign some more depth, lower end players without needing a ton of cap space to fill out the roster, because they're basically at the full roster status now. So important to note for the purposes of small signings going forward. But yeah, it's wild. The because like last time we were on the show, it was like, all right, they have like 39 players on the roster. How are they going to get to 50, 51?
Yeah.
How are they going to get there, without draft picks? Like how much money? And they've done it by basically spending very, very little on individual contracts. And
Terry Fontenot, man.
yeah, the laser eyes Fontenot picture is the best
Terry
one,
Fontenot.
but
Cooking something up.
he's cooking something up. Yeah.
I did say that, based on how free agency period has played out for him, like this draft does, like it has to be a home run.
Yeah.
But I think what they've allowed themselves to do with these free agent signings, like you mentioned, they got the 51 players. I think this allows them to really go after not only, top talent, but honestly get a number of starters in the draft. Like they're not, they don't have to draft for depth, basically is what I'm saying. Like they can, fourth round, fifth round, they can still try to look for starters in that round because of what they did in free agency.
How many starters would be a home run to you? Or like, what's your definition of a home run?
Man, if you can, to me, I've always felt if you can get at least 3 reliable starters out of a draft.
I want 3 starters.
I want 4 starters. Yeah.
If you can get at least 3 starters out of a draft class, then I think it's a solid one at minimum. You go back to the 2016 class, they pulled 4 on defense, right? Keanu, Grady, Debo.
Grady was in 2016. Grady was the year before,
15. Yeah.
but they did get Poole as a UDFA,
right.
And Austin Hooper was an offensive starter. So they got 3 on defense and Austin Hooper, if you count Poole.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
UDFAs absolutely count. They should count double.
Yeah. So at a minimum, 3 starters to me will make a great draft class.
Yeah, I'd hope it's more, but like I also kind of am like quasi penciling in a quarterback for one of the picks. It's like you're not expecting, if it is a quarterback at 4, for that
Pick
to be
number
a starter.
4, yes.
Yeah, so you're not expecting that to be a starter if that's the case. So that makes it a little bit harder because you're gonna have to get a starter with a later pick, but I still think it's possible. All right, before we get our draft guy in here, I do want to.
Did you send him the link?
I did. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely.
So
did.
don't we have a donation from George?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I got to get to George here. So he says, there he is. Yeah. So how to win, get touchdowns in the red zone, stop the other team from getting touchdowns in the red zone. Hence, Surtain and Pitts are the choices for me. Pitts helps the offense. Surtain is a very big quarter that blankets the number 1 red zone option. Yeah, we can't take both. It's going to be one or the other. Did you check out Larry Roundtree? I have checked him out a little bit. We'll probably talk about him with our draft guy who is here. So let me get him in now. Hey, Nathan, what's up, man?
Hey, guys, how's it going?
Good. Welcome to the show. Nathan Cooper. He is at ncoopdraft on Twitter. He is at Sports Info Solutions. Nathan, what exactly is it that you do over there? I think you said you're a scout as well as an analyst.
Yeah, actually, I'm an operations associate.
Okay.
This is my 5th year there. But yeah, I mean, we're a charting company. We chart, all the NFL games, all of the FBS college football games. So we're charting the data such as, the route types, the run types, coverages, who's on the field, snap to throw times, all these things. That's just a few of the hundreds of data points that we collect. We started as a baseball company, actually, in the early 2000s, got started in football in 2015, and actually got started up in basketball last year. Starting to grow a little bit there. But yeah, that's kind of what we do. We've started to evolve a little bit more into the scouting side of things, and that's where the Football Rookie Handbook comes in. Started that in 2019. This is our 3rd edition. Even though we're a stats and analytics company, we wanted to kind of expand and combine the scouting aspect with the stats. I really feel like the stats tell you a lot, but not everything. The film tells you a lot, but not everything as well. So being able to have both of them and use them together can kind of really help you give the clearest picture on possible on a player.
Very cool. Yeah. And I'm going to, by the way, for that rookie handbook, guys, if you're interested, I'm going to add the links to both the digital and hard copies of that to the show description. So if you guys are interested in checking that out, you can find it in the show description in just a minute. I'll update that. But yeah, Nathan, I know we have some draft related questions for you. The big one on everyone's mind, obviously, for the Falcons is at 4th overall. Quarterback is at the top of people's lists, even though Matt Ryan was restructured. So, in your mind, is there a particular quarterback that you would be circling for the Falcons at 4?
I mean, I think a lot of the guys, that you're looking in that area, I think, let's mark Lawrence off the list here. He's going number 1. I think you could arguably say, Fields, Zach Wilson, and Trey Lance. Those are your 3 guys that are in contention for that 4th pick. They bring a little bit of different, traits and abilities. I think Justin Fields is probably the most talented of the group overall, of these 3 guys. Led our handbook quarterbacks in total, rushing total points per game, wide margin there, has every physical tool required of top level NFL quarterback. Excellent athlete against all competition, good playmaking ability, has the arm strength to make every throw, does a lot of good things there. Zach Wilson, fun guy to watch, obviously. Has a great arm, throws a good deep ball, really good on 3rd down, clutch situations, has a little bit of that Johnny Manziel vibe to him, that gunslinger mentality. The one big thing there, didn't play much of a schedule this year. Even looking back at previous seasons, when he faced the top competition, didn't fare that well. So there are a few concerns with him, but he's got the tools. He's a fun guy to watch for sure. And then the last one, Trey Lance, not exactly the play style as Josh Allen, but if you look at some of the things there's a lot of similarities between the two. If you're, look at coming out, Josh Allen didn't play or start that many games, had a really low completion percentage in college. Great athlete, good mobility, big arm. And that's a lot of the same stuff that you can say about Lance as well. Only started 17 games and even at an FCS school as well. Completion percentage, on target rate were good, but not great. But you look at the athleticism, it's there. He runs well, works the pocket well, extends plays, and has a strong arm, makes all the throws. If I'm guessing on how the draft is going to play out, I think Lance is going to be the one that's available at 4. But if all 3 are, I think I'm going to choose Fields.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And yeah, I mean, I also agree with the fact that it's probably going to be Lance as the one left over at 4. Do you think he is worth that 4th overall pick in your mind?
Yeah, Lance is an interesting study. I watched 9 games of him, between 2019 and 2020. There's a lot to like, but then there's a lot of things that make you wonder a little bit. A lot of frustrating things whenever you watch him, but you look at the talent's there. He has a lot of the tools and traits that you can really develop and work with. And being able to get into a situation where he's going to be able to sit behind Matt Ryan for a couple of years, I think is huge for him. I don't think Lance is a guy that should come out and start right away. So I think this would be a good position for him to kind of learn and sit there for a couple of years. But I think, what Lance brings, I think that's worthy of the 4th pick. But he's one of those guys, has a high ceiling, but kind of a low floor as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Erik, did you have anyone else is welcome to jump in with their own questions if they have them too, but
I had a question just regarding, let's take away the top 5 and let's assume the 4 that you just mentioned and Mac Jones are in the top 5. Are there any other quarterbacks past those 5 whom you can see potentially starting at the next level that a team would be fortunate to get after the 1st round?
Yeah, 2 guys that I kind of like, in the mid to late round area. Davis Mills out of Stanford. I would have liked to see a full season from him at Stanford, but the talent's there. Throws a catchable ball, puts it where it needs to be, has enough mobility to kind of work the pocket and gain a few yards as needed as well. Needs to work on the overall decision-making and the anticipation, but I like what he brings, a good guy that you can develop. And another guy, Jamie Newman, should have been playing in Georgia this year. Another guy that was hampered due to COVID, opted out of 2020. But a guy that has a strong arm, throws a catchable ball. But the accuracy is a little concerning with him. He doesn't throw, on target as well as some of these other guys, but does a good job working the field, extends plays, can be threat as a runner. Those are 2 guys that I think could be guys that can kind of come in, develop a little bit, and be at least, a circumstantial starter at the next level.
Yeah. I like both those guys. What are your thoughts on Kellen Mond as well? I know he's a popular name among some fans.
Yeah, mine's another guy. I thought about him as well. Definitely a good athlete, tall, lanky frame, quick release. Definitely some things that you need to work with him, but another guy that's a good athlete, can run the ball, can extend plays. And I think he's another developmental guy that we kind of have in that same mix in that area as well, that I think he can come in, learn the NFL system and kind of develop into at least maybe, a circumstantial guy or a solid backup.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. Those all three of the guys you mentioned, I think, are possible mid-round options. But I know it's like, for me, if I'm the Falcons, like, if they don't take one at 4, I just, like, it's hard to slot one in like a mock draft in those mid-rounds, because those picks are so needed for other positions, and there's a lot of positions they need. But speaking again of 4th overall, are there really any defensive players that you would consider worth the 4th overall pick? I know some have mentioned like Micah Parsons. Caleb Farley was one for me with the medical stuff. Maybe that's off the table for some teams, but who would be a defensive guys you would consider that high in the draft?
Yeah, that one's tough. I don't think there are any defensive players worthy of going at number 4. Our highest graded defensive player is Patrick Surtain out of Alabama, but I still think he's more of that back end of the top 10. Maybe a trade back. I can see that. The guys you mentioned, Caleb Farley, Micah Parsons in that area, obviously a JC Horn, something like that. I think those are all guys worth considering, but I think at 4, it's probably a little too rich for me to want to go with any of these defensive guys.
Yeah, I agree with that, because and I know a lot of fans, believe the Falcons' biggest weakness is the defense, and it is. But that's just kind of, they're in a bad spot to need a defensive playmaker, because at 4, it's just, you're reaching, in my opinion. So I agree with your take there. Did any of you guys have other questions here? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, because there's a subsection of the fan base who has the mentality of, the Falcons need to forego taking a quarterback this year and, look at that position next year. I was wondering if you could touch on the quarterback class for next season, because, from all intents and purposes, what we're seeing is it's not as strong as this year's quarterback class. But how much of a difference or a drop off is there between the QB class next year versus this year, if there is one?
We haven't started looking at next year too much, but obviously the guys you're kind of looking at, the Sam Howell, Spencer Rattler, those kind of guys are probably the top guys that you're wanting to look at there. Guys that are solid. Howell, good job extending plays, makes a lot of plays, can throw a good ball. Did a lot for that North Carolina offense. And then Rattler, what he did towards the end of the season at Oklahoma, he started playing really well there. We'll start doing more of our, research for next year's class here in the next couple of months. Overall, I'd say this year's quarterback class is pretty solid at the top, and then it drops off pretty hard towards the bottom. Next year, I could see, there being a couple of guys at the top, pretty similar, but maybe a little bit more depth or more options throughout the draft next year.
Yeah.
I got a question. Thanks for coming on, Nathan.
Absolutely.
Is there any players, obviously you can't see the future, but is there any players who you think, looking at the Falcons pick 35, that are first rounders who may just drop out to where the Falcons could reach, and get them in round 2, kind of those fringe first rounders?
Yeah, I could probably see, I know we talked about running back a little bit. I think probably Najee Harris goes in the first round, but you look at a guy like Javonte Williams, you guys signed Mike Davis, who in my opinion is probably more of that, backup change of pace guy. I think Javonte Williams could come in and really be a starter there. Mike Davis can kind of be that number 2, Ito Smith at number 3. Javonte Williams is a fun guy to watch. He really took the next step this year. I think he's one guy that's kind of on that fringe that you could look for. And then also, the edge class and the corner class are pretty big, the back half of the first round, early second round, kind of depending on who you're looking at there. Definitely some guys that you can consider: a Greg Newsome, a Rodarius Williams, Asante Samuel at corner, or an edge, guys like a Kwity Paye or a Jalen Phillips, or even like a Jason Owe or something like that. Those guys that, talked about probably in the back end of the first round, some could slip. There's a lot of talent in this class, and I could see a lot of good talent getting, bumped down, each round throughout this class.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about edge rushers a little bit, I am curious how you guys see the edge class. There's a lot of debate about who the top edge rusher is. Some people are in love with the upside of Rousseau. Some people are all about the, proven production of a guy like Kwity Paye. I've seen Azeez Ojulari popping up into the top 5. So who do you guys have as your top guy?
Yeah, we actually have Jaelan Phillips out of Miami. Yeah. He's our top guy. Interesting guy, 6'4", 266. Fourth-year junior, started out at UCLA, then retired for 2019, and then came back with Miami in 2020. But he has all the physical tools, has the athleticism you look for, the bend, the hand use, strength, relentless to the quarterback, pursuit to the football. Had really good numbers in 10 games this year, 8 sacks, 14.5 tackles for loss, 35 pressures. And then if you look at our handbook, he was, tops in all edges. 2.1 run defense total points per game. So he's not just the pass rusher, but he can play against the run as well. Obviously, we have a lot of guys rated high. Those guys you mentioned, we also have high. Ojulari is our number 2 guy. But yeah, I think we may be going against the grain against, most of the consensus with Phillips at number 1, but we like what he is and what he brings.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really think that's a hot take personally. I think Jaelan Phillips is awesome. And if it wasn't for the injury history, he probably would be a lot higher on people's boards. Yeah, I think that's a spicy one that I like. I do like me some Jaelan Phillips, particularly in a defense like Dean Pease, where he's going to be asked to stand up sometimes, where he's going to be asked to put his hand in the ground. He's going to be asked to stunt and twist and do all that stuff. He has experience doing that. He's played in several different defenses and alignments throughout his time too. So, definitely could see him being a great fit for the Falcons. I just don't think he's going to be around long enough in the second round for them.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
Who are some of your favorite guys who will most likely be selected on day 3 of the draft? I know we never know who will get over-selected, under-selected, where they'll go exactly, but who are some of the names that we should be watching out for on that Sunday afternoon where we're just laying on our couch with the ESPN just turned on? It's Saturday. My bad.
That's okay.
It shows how
by
much
then
I care about
the days blend
the
together. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It feels like a Sunday.
Yep. We can stick with the same positions that we kind of been talking about. Edge rusher. I think Chris Rumph is an interesting guy. He has a long frame, 6'2", 235. Athleticism is off the charts. You can kind of mix him up, 2-point stance, 3-point stance. You can even, line him up over the guards, over the center. Very good bend around the edge, range to go get ball carriers out on the edge. Can cover the flats as well, drop back. Craziest part about him is I'm not convinced he actually knew what he was doing whenever he was at Duke. Whenever you watch him on film, he just sort of did his own thing a little bit. So if you imagine a guy like that, taking that kind of guy who's been pretty productive as is, with those traits, but didn't really know what he was doing, and then getting him into an NFL facility, I think is pretty scary. So I think he's more of a fringe day 2, day 3 guy, because I could see somebody taking him and betting on his upside and athleticism, in the 3rd round or something. But he would be a fun guy, I think, early on day 3. And then if we talk about the running backs a little bit too, Jamar Jefferson out of Oregon State. He's our 12th ranked running back, runs a little upright and had a few fumble issues at Oregon State, but he shows good vision and burst through the hole, can start and stop quickly, good acceleration. And even though he wasn't targeted much as a receiver, he runs good routes from the backfield, shows soft hands at the catch point. If you watched him last year in the fog against Oregon, running all over them, that was definitely a fun game to watch. So I think he's one guy that he can definitely come in, be more of a change of pace guy. If Mike Davis is going to be kind of, labeled as the starter, I think Jefferson can come in and be a good change of pace guy for him. Yeah,
I love Jamar Jefferson. He's a guy that I think needs to be talked about more as a guy who's capable of starting. You know, I think we get into day 3, everyone just assumes these players are all backups, but you know, Devontae Freeman ended up being a starter, 4th round pick. You know, I think Jamar Jefferson could maybe even be had a little bit later than that, just because it seems like the consensus is kind of low on him overall. And it is a deep class too. So he just isn't quite as flashy as some of these guys. You know, he's not the dynamic playmaker that like a Kenneth Gainwell is. He didn't go to a, you know, major program like a Trey Sermon, didn't have that electric season last 2019 like Chuba Hubbard. So just kind of gotten forgotten about, but a very quality player, certainly. All right, I know George is going to ask me about it, so I'm just going to preempt him. What do you think about Kyle Pitts at 4th overall? Because the hype has started to take off for the Falcons selecting Pitts there. So what is your guys' take on Pitts being worth a pick like that?
I mean, we have Pitts really high, and there's a reason for that. He's a special talent. As impressive as a receiving mismatch as we've seen come out, you know, in recent years. But he's capable enough as an inline blocker as well to operate more than, you know, just an outside big receiver. He's a guy that's tough to game plan for. Speed and catch point savvy, and he requires coverage from top secondary players. So you're not looking at, you know, having to cover him with a linebacker or a safety because he's going to be able to beat those guys more times than not. But then also if you're trying to go, you know, pretty DB heavy to sort of counter that, then it sort of opens up the rushing attack. So he's a guy that whenever he's on the field, it just really opens up the offense. Willingness to compete, execute in the run game, you know, as a regular tight end is, you know, sufficient enough to get by as you know, your number 1 tight end as well. But he's a player, you know, 6'5", 240, can be used all over the field. He's going to be successful regardless of, you know, where he lines up. But I think the coaching staff needs to come in and plan on using him as a mismatch all over the field to really maximize his potential. Even though he's listed as a tight end, he has the receiving ability. I think you can't pigeonhole him into just one position. I think using him in different ways in different areas on the field is really what's going to help him be as successful as he can and really maximize all of the traits and skill set that he brings.
Yeah. Yeah, I know there's definitely a very passionate section of our fan base led by our top donator / show benefactor, George Costanza, who's been like all over the Pitts train since since the college season ended basically. So I'm sure he's enjoying the fact that Pitts has really taken off in terms of, you know, teams really viewing him as a top 5 potential pick. And we have heard, you know, the buzz that the Falcons may be interested. Particularly for a team like the Falcons, do you see that as being a worthwhile pick, you know, knowing Arthur Smith's love for the tight end? And it's rare to see a tight end taken that high. So what thoughts there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Pitts is he's the one of a kind type of guy. There's not many guys that you would take this high. And that makes sense, obviously, but I think Pitts can be, you know, spoken as in a little bit different breadth than most of those other guys. Like I said, he's a guy that you can use all over the field. He's not just a tight end, but you can, you know, use him in 2 tight end packages. You can use him in 11 personnel. You can use him as your X receiver. You can use him to block in the run game. You can obviously use him against linebackers, safeties, and then he's going to require, you know, top cornerback help in certain situations as well. And I really think what he does and what he brings really opens up the rest of the offense. So is it something the Falcons really need to do? Probably not. But, you know, is he a guy that's going to come in and really be dominant? And is the pick going to be worth it in a few years? Probably, if that were the way that they go.
Yeah, I mean, I could see the main argument I could see for it is definitely like a best player available type thing, depending on, you know, if their chosen quarterback is or isn't there. Go ahead, Adnan. Yeah.
Another guy that's been talked about as a potential non-quarterback number 4 overall pick for the Falcons is Penei Sewell. Is Sewell that generational type offensive lineman that we keep hearing about regarding his name? Is he that guy? Is he projected to be that guy who's going to anchor a left side of an offensive line for the next 10, 15 years? And would he be worthwhile at number 4? Same question along with the Kyle Pitts one.
Yeah, I think so. We actually have him tied with Trevor Lawrence for our top overall grade in the whole handbook. So we definitely have a high grade on him. And we graded him, you know, at left tackle You guys have Jake Matthews there already. So, we don't really think that he should be moved from left tackle. So he could play some guard if really needed. But he has all the skill set and traits that you look for. Excellent anchor ability and play strength, in pass pro, dominant run blocking ability, good job getting to the second level and with balance. And that all suggests that, he could be outstanding, whether he's at left tackle, left guard, or anything like that. But he's a guy he's really good. We can say that, he's definitely worth a top 5 pick. And I think he's going to be a guy that's playing for a while, whichever team decides to get him.
Yeah, I'm excited about his potential too. Real quick break here, guys, to remind you to please like the video if you're enjoying it, if you're enjoying our discussion this evening. I know we got a lot of new folks in here tonight. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button as well. That helps us out, helps out all those algorithms out there that we don't truly understand, but that control our entire lives. So, do those things to help us out. We appreciate that. And as I said, Nathan Cooper is at ncoopdraft on Twitter, and the company, I forget the handle. I know it's at Sports Info Solutions, but there might be underscores in there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's sports info underscore SIS, I believe.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, I knew there was an underscore somewhere, but yeah.
Forget that one every once in a while.
Yeah, it happens. Eric, every time I say Eric's Twitter handle, there's 2 underscores. So it just takes forever. But speaking of, Sewell probably, if he was drafted by the Falcons, would play guard. I know you mentioned it briefly. Is that a transition you think he could make? Is it one that you think would be good for him long term? Or do you think that the Falcons should be taking him with the eye of eventually moving him to tackle?
Yeah, I think you take him with the eye of eventually moving him to left tackle, but I think he could come in and play guard right away. Like I said, a lot of the skill set that he has translates really well to guard. Matthews is there at left tackle. You bring Sewell in at guard, that's going to be a pretty dominant left side. If Matthews decides to leave, I think Sewell, fits in at left tackle. Again, that he's our top rated player. We graded him at left tackle. So we feel that he comes in as a left tackle right away. But obviously in the Falcons situation, you start him at guard and then move him out to left tackle whenever that position opens up. I think that's perfectly fine in Atlanta.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I think he played guard in high school, or maybe his first season in college. So he's got some experience there, but
he was actually recruited as a guard.
That's right. Yeah.
So.
But yeah, I mean, when you're taking an offensive lineman in the top 4, or you're unless it's Quentin Nelson level guard, you want him to play tackle eventually. So what about, this has been floated, I think on this show we talked about it. Caleb McGarry has been a little bit shaky, not necessarily someone you're looking to replace, but is Sewell a potential fit at right tackle? Do you think he has the skill set to succeed there as well? I don't think he has any experience there, but what about that sort of move for him?
Yeah, I think, he can fit on the right side as well. He's not one of those guys that can only play the left side. I think he would be just fine on the right side. I think we actually, I don't want to get this wrong, but I think we may have actually graded McGarry as a guard. So kicking him inside would actually be something that we would have been fine with. But I think, a guy like Sewell, he's a guy can play left tackle, left guard, right guard, and right tackle. I don't know if he's ever snapped before, but maybe he could even play center.
I wouldn't put it past him. Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, I think he would be just fine on the right side. There's nothing in his game that would suggest he wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, I agree. That's an interesting potential move, because I think if we're talking about the most likely scenarios, Jake Matthews, they just restructured, like a max restructure, so they're probably not looking to move him before the end of his contract. But Sewell also is he's going to be 20 when the season starts. So they could afford to play him at guard for most of his rookie contract, then move him to left tackle and let Jake Matthews walk when he's a little bit older. That's perfectly on the table too. But yeah, I mean, we've talked about Sewell, obviously. Another guy I really like is Elijah Vera Tucker in a potential trade down. How do you guys view Tucker? Do you view him as a guard or a tackle? What are your thoughts on Tucker?
Yeah, we have Tucker as our top guard, actually. So we like what Tucker brings. Good awareness, lower body technique, versatility. He played a little bit of tackle and guard. We view him as a top guard. I know USC just had their pro day today, looked pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a guy that, I think in the middle of the first round, we have him as a guard. You could probably kick him out to tackle. If a tackle needy team decides to take him. But yeah, we're pretty high on him as being a guard at the next level for sure.
Yeah, he's a prospect I really like. Probably not someone the Falcons are going to get their hands on unless they have a pretty significant trade down, but definitely someone I enjoy watching. He is a people mover.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's a fun
Those
one.
are the guys you need at guard.
Oh, yeah, and we know Arthur Smith really values the offensive line, so that sort of, trade down, say, to like San Francisco or New England, if one of those teams is looking to get ultra aggressive for a quarterback, could put the Falcons in a position where Elijah Vera Tucker is an ideal selection at that spot. Let's see. So one position we haven't really touched on much would be safety. The Falcons desperately need a free safety even after the free agency period. What are your thoughts on this free safety class? There seem to be a lot of guys in that kind of early day 2 to, that round 2 and 3 looks really strong at safety. So how do you guys view that safety class there?
Yeah, we have Trevin Merrick and Ardarius Washington as our top 2 safeties. So the 2 TCU guys there. Okay. Those are our 2 guys that are free safeties. They both do a lot of good things. Obviously, a little undersized when you're talking about Washington. But he's a guy he's all over the place. He's not a guy that plays small, even though, he's listed pretty small. He plays a lot bigger than he is. He's way more physical than, his stature suggests. A guy that can play the deep end, can play the intermediate levels, can come up and make hits, in the screen game and the run game, and kind of be all over the place as well. Merrick, we have a really high grade on him. A guy that has good instincts, can also play a little bit of, all over the field, can play all 3 levels there. The ball skills are pretty ridiculous. He tracks the ball really well, is really rangy on the back end, and plays really well in that intermediate level too. So those are the 2 guys that, we have as the top end guys. Obviously, you have your strong safeties in there as well. Our next free safety is probably a guy like Andre Sisco. Obviously with him, his ball skills are ridiculous. Gives up some things in other aspects of the game. But whenever you look at him, his range and ball skills are just off the charts. So that's kind of where we're looking at with the free safety class. And I think there's some good ones to be had there in the middle rounds for sure.
Yeah, it's very deep there. So I'd be kind of shocked the Falcons don't come out of day 2 with one of those guys. You mentioned Sisco. I got to see him play up close because I live in Syracuse. Super exciting player. Had the injury, so that's going to probably drop him below where he should be drafted. Richie Grant is another one that I like a lot. And I'm interested in the Ardarius Washington take because a lot of people have dinged him a lot for his size, but when you put on the tape, he's like a little fire plug, man. He's crazy. I do like absolutely. Washington. So you guys just think that maybe the size is not going to be as big of a deal as some people are making it out to be?
Yeah, it's tough with size. You can't really bet on that too much. You can't really bet on the exceptions too often. But yeah, like you said, when you watch the tape, he's fun to watch. He plays a whole lot bigger than his size. You wouldn't expect him to come in at 5'7" whenever you watch him on the tape. And like I said, he does a little bit of everything. Plays stronger, plays more physical than his size suggests. And he can fly around with the best of them. Can guard the smaller, speedier guys, and can also guard the tight ends at the slot as well. So I think he can do a little bit of everything. And yeah, I think we're a little bit higher on him than most. But I think at the next level, he's gonna bring a lot to an NFL team.
Yeah, that's an exciting one. I do want to open the floor for the rest of you guys if you guys have any more questions as well.
I got 2 questions for you. So first, put on your Falcons GM hat. You're on the clock at 4. Pitts is there along with let's say Lance and Fields are available as well. Knowing what that the Falcons have done this offseason and knowing what as far as them restructuring Matt Ryan's deal, what may be their potential outlook for the next 5 to 10 years or so, what direction would you go?
I think I'd probably go Fields. I think there's enough depth at a lot of these other positions to start taking those guys. And with as many picks as the Falcons have as well, I think there's a lot of guys that you can get in the second, third, fourth round that are going to be guys that really, change the look of the roster. Fields, I think, like we talked about earlier, this quarterback class is high at the top. If you're really wanting a quarterback, I think this might be the time to go do it. And I think Fields is probably the best of those three that are probably there. And, he's going to come in, he's going to sit behind Matt Ryan. So you're not going to have to throw him into the fire, which to me is a great situation. I've always been an advocate for most quarterbacks to come in and sit behind guys, especially if you have a guy of Matt Ryan's, stature in front of him, and be able to do that. And, maybe it's not the best thing, with a lot of these guys, throughout the top end of the draft. But I just think there's a lot of, depth at a lot of these other positions that you can get a lot of really good guys in those next couple of rounds. So I think quarterback is probably the way to go, just to start grooming that guy, and you can really fill the top ends of a lot of positions throughout those next couple of rounds.
That's music to my ears because I've been trying to.
I'm a big Fields fan. I'm a big Lance fan too. But
I'm trying to fight off the Kyle Pitts at 4th overall thing.
Erik's fighting the good fight over here.
It looks great. You're adding another weapon to everything, but I think the more logical decision would be start grooming the quarterback now that you have an opportunity to get one.
Yeah, but what would be more fun?
Grooming.
I would have fun with Justin Fields. I can't speak for you guys, but yeah.
Here's the dilemma that I'm running into because Nathan mentioned earlier, next year you got Rattler, you got Howell, but that's even if those guys declare. That's not even a guarantee that those guys are going to put their name in the draft. And if they do, that's two quarterbacks who are likely probably going to be top 3 picks, which means the Falcons are going to have to mortgage the future to trade up to get one of those guys. I think they're as an organization, they're putting themselves back by not taking advantage of this opportunity to draft a franchise quarterback when you have a franchise quarterback. So again, it's a rare opportunity. I think they need to strike when the iron is hot right now because teams don't get this chance. But second question, kind of taking the spotlight a little bit off the Falcons. And we see it every year. We're starting to see, of course, the draft rumors, the smoke screens that are swirling around. What's one domino that you think will fall early on in the draft that's going to pretty much set off possibly a wildfire of picks? I mean, what is the one move you may see a team trading up, a team making a surprise pick? What is one move that you think will happen that kind of shakes things up a little bit?
That's a tough one. I think, you could say this really with any year, but I think this year more than not, I think it's going to be the trade ups for the quarterbacks. I think you're going to see a lot of trading up for these guys. I could see all 4 of those guys going in the first 4 picks. Mm-hmm. There could be a lot of trades that start to do that. And then that's going to sort of set the domino effect going at, whether it's 4 or 5 or 6. For a lot of these guys that potentially could have been, a number 2 or a number 3 pick. Now you're looking at number 5 or number 6 or even 7, for these guys, because then that may even spark a little bit more trade talk for some of these other guys falling where a lot of people didn't see them falling. So I think, more this year than any, I think you're going to get those quarterbacks going really early. And I think that's really going to start the domino effect, right around pick 4 or 5. And you're going to see a lot of good talent going off the board right around there.
Okay, so you think it's pretty much going to be a team possibly hopping up to go get a guy that's probably going to create a lasting domino effect.
I think so, because then you're going to start to see the other quarterback needy teams start to draft Mac Jones or these other guys maybe at 10, maybe in the top half of the teens, and then maybe a guy that wasn't going to go until late 2 or 3 is now talked about at the end of the first round. It's that sort of draft, especially at the quarterback position. Like I said, there's not a lot of depth throughout the draft whenever you get past those first 5 or 6 quarterbacks there. So I could see some teams that are really wanting to get those quarterbacks, start hopping up and maybe taking them a little earlier than they were planning to, just because all these teams are starting to trade up and draft these guys in the top 4 picks.
Right. Because, I mean, a lot of people, I guess, foresaw possibly someone, hopping into Deshaun Watson sweepstakes and getting Deshaun Watson. But with everything that's transpired so far with him, that may not even be the case. And that keeps a quarterback needy team on the board in the draft. One that you probably saw, going after Deshaun Watson early on, before the draft. Is there a favorite position of yours within the draft?
I'm a big receiver guy. I like receiver. I like watching receivers, and last year was a crazy receiver class, and I think this year might be just as good. Okay. There's a lot of fun guys to watch at the top end of the draft, and I think anywhere in the draft you're going to get receivers. It's a tough position because obviously when the draft's over, you've gone through 7 rounds. There's always 10, 15 solid receivers that you think probably should have been drafted. They're out there. Now they're undrafted free agents. But there's just a lot of good, fun receivers to watch, especially in this draft class.
Well, you mentioned receivers. I got to know, man, your insight on Devontae Smith and how he's playing out this whole pre-draft process. I've never seen it before. I've never seen a guy try to pretty much slither his way around the size concerns the way that he's doing. I was at the Senior Bowl. He literally measured, wingspan or whatever, and that's it. He didn't put any pads. He didn't get on the scale. He didn't do anything. So as far as him going forward, do you think it's going to be an issue for him, the fact that he's weighing $170 right now? So, how do you see him playing out in the NFL?
We have him as our number 3 receiver. So, I mean, obviously the season he just had is crazy season, and having him at number 3 tells you the receiver class that we have. Right. Everyone knew he was $170. We all knew that. I think he knows that. He knows everybody knows that. But it's hard to argue with what he brings. He's arguably one of the best college football seasons of all time. You look at that last year. You have Chase. One of the top seasons of all time last year. Is it going to be a concern with his size? Obviously, it's hard to play at 170 a receiver. You definitely have to be quick. You have to be fast. You have to run good routes. You got to be able to stay off of contact from these defensive backs. But I think his route running, his athleticism is really good. It's fun to watch him play. We have Jalen Waddle number 1, so we have Waddle over Devontae Smith. And I think that Waddle probably, would have had just as good a season if he didn't get hurt. But what Devontae Smith did, and everybody knew Devontae Smith was getting the ball. And still he was able to, run away from these guys, find the openings, and be able to catch as many passes and get as many yards as he did. So I think he may have a little bit of a concern, issue and, a tough time with his size at the next level. But I think his athleticism and his skill set is enough to kind of offset that eventually, here in a couple of years. And plus, you got to realize when you get into an NFL facility, you're getting into an NFL weight room. He's going to put on a little bit. He's not going to get to 190, but he's going to put a little bit more muscle and bulk on, and be able to get a little bit stronger than what he is now. So I don't have too big of an issue with it.
I guess a lot of concerns with that was, the fact that he spent let's say 3 years in the Alabama program, and
yep.
You would think, which is that's a program that's as close to an NFL organization that you can think of, but you would think he was able to put on considerable weight while at Alabama, but he really didn't. I think he was recruited at about $160, $165 maybe. So he only put on a handful of pounds through his 3 years at Alabama. So I guess that was the concern for most of that. I believe that's a legitimate concern. The fact that he played for a program like Alabama, he didn't really put on the weight that you would expect him to do so because of that, with him there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, on the topic of wide receivers, and this will be our final question before we close it up for tonight, but I am interested. The Falcons probably are going to add someone because, like you said, it's a very deep class. Is there a day 3, probably a later day 3, 5th or 6th round, a wide receiver that you really like potentially for the Falcons to kind of bolster their depth chart?
Sorry, can you ask that one more time? I'm getting a little bit of
no problem.
having a tough time with you guys.
Yeah, a day 3 wide receiver for the Falcons that you might really like. Someone in that, maybe 5th, 6th round range.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of receivers in this class. A lot of these guys are fun to watch. I think one guy that you could think about is Jalen Darden out of North Texas. Fun slot receiver. He can start and stop on a dime. Super shifty. Makes a lot of catches, makes a lot of guys miss. Put up a ton of really good numbers this year. So I think he's a fun guy to watch. Obviously the size concerns with him are definitely an issue, which I think is why you're looking at him more in the mid to late rounds. But I think Darden's a fun guy that you get the ball in his hands, he can do a lot of stuff with it. You get the ball into his hands, in screens, crossing routes, and different things like that. He's going to make a lot of guys miss and create a lot of yards on his own. So he's a fun guy to watch. This draft class has a lot of different shapes and sizes at receiver. You got a lot of big guys all throughout the draft. You have a lot of slot receivers and a lot of the small, speedy guys as well. But Jalen Darden's a guy that I watched and I really liked. And you look at the size concerns and stuff, and it's definitely an issue. But you put him in the right situation, he's a fun guy to watch.
Yeah. All right, and then I can't leave without getting to George's question, which George is a big Larry Roundtree fan. So do you have any takes at all on the Missouri running back and his potential NFL projection?
Yeah, Roundtree we have as our number 8 running back. And, he's a guy who played really well at Missouri, put up good numbers over the past few years. One guy that has, really good contact balance, shows good vision. He's a good yards after contact guy as well. So he's going to put up, kind of get the dirty yards in the middle, but he's also going to be able to do a little bit on the outside and the edge as well. Decent in pass pro, decent, in the passing game. So he's not just a runner, but he can kind of bring a little bit more than that. So he's a guy that you can really look for probably in those mid rounds. A guy that, we had a little bit of, a couple guys high on him, couple guys low on him, couple guys in the middle. But overall, I like what he brings. And I think he's a guy that can really bring a lot to an NFL team and kind of, get those tough yards in some different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, there you go, George. There's your Larry Roundtree take. Obviously, these guys have watched a lot more Roundtree tape than I have. And by that, I mean I haven't watched any. So I've seen Missouri games, but that doesn't count. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Before we take off, want to give our guest, he is Nathan Cooper, like I said, at NCoopDraft. Chance to plug his stuff, obviously, the guide and all that. So yeah, Nathan, why don't you tell the people where they can find it, what you guys got going on with the Rookie Handbook?
Yeah, SAS Football Rookie Handbook. You can find the hard copy at actasports.com. That's ACTA sports.com. And for the first time this year, you can actually get a digital version, and that's available on Amazon. And definitely a lot of good stuff in there. We got over 300 players reports with the stats in there this year. It's over 700 pages, tons of really great information in there. And then you can also check out some draft prospect breakdowns that we do on our Sports Info Solutions YouTube page as well. So a lot of good stuff going on. We have 3 sports rolling right now. But for the football side, we definitely feel like we're growing well, and obviously draft time's approaching, and that's my favorite time of the year.
Yeah, it's a great season. And again, thank you for coming on, Nathan. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me.
Absolutely. Also with us tonight, he is the Falcoholic's Director of Guest Personnel. He is Evan Birchfield at Evan Birchfield on Twitter. Evan, anything that you're working on, anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, Nathan, again for coming on. You shared a lot of draft knowledge. Just go to falcoholic.com. We have a ton of different content. I have my interview with Josh Harris that's up, the Falcons long snapper, who and this is news. He's coming on the show next week, so
yes.
if you have questions, prepare. But
those
just
burning
go to
long snapper questions that you've always wanted.
Yeah, exactly. He'll tell you. He's a good. He's pretty cool too.
Yeah.
But yeah, go to falcoholic.com and you can follow the Falcoholic on Instagram. So
yeah, check that out, guys, for sure. Evan does a bang up job with the Instagram as well. I thought I knew social media, and then people said Instagram was a thing, and I was like, all right, well, I don't know that. So yeah, thanks for doing that, Evan. We appreciate you. Also with us tonight, Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Adnan, anything that you would like to plug?
Look, that March Madness thing, it's going to happen eventually. I don't know when, but
the technical issues have, struck the March Madness bracket.
It's been like 2 weeks.
It was like Oral Roberts upsetting Ohio State. It just blew up the whole thing. So,
Should have started like 2 weeks ago, but better late than never. It's going to happen. It's going to go into April, and I'll get that going soon, I hope. Or you know what? Maybe I won't. Maybe we'll wait till next March. No, it'll happen.
No, it's going to happen. He put in too much work. Put in too much work. We're going to make sure this gets done. But yeah, definitely we will tweet it out. We will make sure you guys know because that's going to be a fun bracket to break down. So definitely check that out, guys. Finally, my co-host Erik Robinson at _Erik_Robinson on Twitter. Erik, anything that you're working on you'd like to let the people know about? Erik? Hello?
You're on mute.
Oh, he's on mute.
Sorry about that.
There you go. Yeah.
Had a recently released scouting report on Ronnie Perkins, edge rusher out of Oklahoma, so give that a look on the Falcoholic site. Got other scouting reports out on Jalen Phillips, Gregory Rousseau, Kwity Paye. So, yeah, definitely give those a look-see whenever you get a chance. Probably going to dive into some cornerback safety stuff pretty soon as well. So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, guys, definitely check that out if you want to get the latest takes on Ronnie Perkins, who actually, based on reading his scouting reports from others, I didn't think I would like that much, but actually looking at some of his tape, he's a little better than I thought he would be. So definitely check that out, guys. And before I do my sign-off, I do want to shout out our two most recent Patreon subscribers. Hold on while I pull up your names because I don't want to say them wrong. So we got two more supporters. We got Marcus Worrells and Juan Davis II. Thank you guys so much for your support. And if anyone else is interested in joining us on Patreon, getting access to some exclusive content, including our monthly Falcons question and answer sessions, you can sign up at patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. Join our growing community. We got 12 patrons now. Wow. That's nice. Yeah. So thank you guys. We really appreciate you. But yeah, guys, I am Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin on Twitter. I will have my next mock draft very soon. So be looking for that on thefalcoholic.com along with a new video. I think the first one, I'm going to be breaking down, doing some, film breakdowns on some of these free agent editions. So the first one's probably going to be Mike Davis. So look for that either late this week or early next week, depending on how much film I want to get into for that. But otherwise, guys, like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Again, thank you so much for tuning in, all of the regulars, all of the new folks. We appreciate you guys tuning in during the off season. We will be back to once a week. As long as I don't go on vacation, into the wilderness where the internet cannot support the stream. So as long as that doesn't happen, we'll continue doing once a week, at least until the draft. So we'll see you guys next Wednesday. As Evan said, with Falcons long snapper Josh Harris joining the show. We hope to be getting some additional players on throughout the offseason as well. So until then, guys, for all of us, thank you for tuning in, and we will talk to you next time.